Hello, hello. Hope everybody is doing well. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the third edition of Ask Me Anything. I'm Linden Tibbets, founder and CEO of IFTTT. Have really gotten a lot of value personally out of these sessions in the past. Hopefully other folks that have attended a couple of these so far have as well. Looking forward to answer any and all questions you might have. And right out of the gate, want to make sure we cover something that has been popping up on Twitter quite a bit. So if you haven't had an opportunity to attend one of these sessions in the past, or if you're going to miss a future one, I'm always available on Twitter at LTibbets, at LTIBBETS. Shoot questions my way or comments. And if you want to make sure and catch any Ask Me Anything or any other content we're publishing here on YouTube again in the future, just go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. One of the things that has become really clear, judging based on kind of some of the Twitter comments I've seen, is we want to make sure and clarify exactly how our business works, especially in relation to how we charge other brands that are part of the IFTTT platform. And in some cases, how those brands may or may not be passing on some of those costs to users. I know there's been some frustration, and rightly so, from users, from brands that are basically putting IFTTT behind a paywall. I think namely EWeLink has been one of the brands that has done that here recently. And there's also been some communication around Tuya for the folks that are using the Smart Life apps. And what I'll say first and foremost is, we don't want to dictate what brands charge for, how their business models work. That's really not our intent, and it's really unfair. We wouldn't want other brands to do that to us. The other thing I'll say is at the beginning of this year, we launched what we call the developer plan, which is a plan for businesses to be on IFTTT, just like you would assume any of the brands are on IFTTT today, for a very reasonable cost that doesn't matter how many users actually connect. So it's $199 per year. Really not even a business for us as much as kind of a verification, a double check to make sure that other brand is serious and willing to put a little bit of money down in order to keep the quality high. And that's available to any brand that's currently or thinking about being a part of the IFTTT platform. So in those situations, it should be relatively easy for businesses to be a part of IFTTT without having to incur a big overhead. Now, we've bundled some other things in some of our bigger packages, namely what we call Connect, which is an API-based way to embed much richer integrations that are IFTTT powered in your own user experiences if you're a brand, along with some other things like analytics and the ability to publish applets and things like that. Those do have a per user cost associated with them, but are completely optional for the brands that really want to kind of take advantage of everything that IFTTT has to offer. So I wanted to make sure and really comment on that right out of the gate. I'm sure there'll be some questions around that later. Happy to clarify more. The last thing I'll say about our business is one of the reasons we've started to do these Ask Me Anything sessions is to get a lot more feedback and participate a lot more with you, the end users, the people that have been using IFTTT for the better part of a decade, or if you've just signed up today, and to try to hear really kind of from the horse's mouth, from the folks that are taking advantage of what we do in their lives every day, and figuring out from them, how do we make IFTTT better? Because what we're really interested in doing as well is offering a premium plan, something for those users to go above and beyond. For instance, we've had people ask us really since the first day we launched way back in 2010 for things like more advanced applets, if this, then that, in that, and that, conditional logic, multiple accounts for specific services. And those are all the features that we're really considering making a part of this premium package. And we want to make sure we do that in a way that users that have been longtime fans of the service think are the right ways and are really helpful for them. So I'm very excited to kind of refocus some of that energy after a couple of years of being really laser focused on building out our products for the businesses themselves, to now also be able to do that for end users as well. So with that, I'll jump right in to try to answer some of your questions. If I don't get to everybody's question, like I said, please ping me on Twitter, or know that we're going to be doing more of these sessions here in the future. And thanks again for participating and tuning in. So right out of the gate, Good Book has a great comment. Thank you. Glad you're a part of what we're doing. Charles Tharp, thank you for commenting as well. Glad you're thinking about using IFT more. Doug, you've got a question about the Tekken Mini Wi-Fi timer outlet that works with Alexa and Google Assistant, asking if it works with IFT. I'm not sure. Now, you can do a pretty quick search just on Google or on IFT itself to see if it's there. And if it's not, I think that the easiest way to get them involved is to point them to that developer plan. Tweet at them if they're on Twitter, and tell them you want them to be a part of IFT. And we've seen that brands, hopefully are also listening to their users as well, and will take action. Good morning, Raphael. Thank you, Peter. Generous attitude. Glad it's refreshing. Hope you're well and safe. Let's see. So Clovis in New Mexico, you are understanding that Google and similar companies are paying you to use IFT. So if you mean paying you as in me, paying IFT to use IFT, yes, that is correct. And that is one of the ways our business is a little bit different than other businesses. Namely, if you're familiar with Zapier and other companies that do something similar, our business is built around the brands themselves. And we mentioned some of our intent to also offer a premium plan for end users. But we've really felt strongly that the brands themselves, for our specific set of services and brands that are really consumer facing primarily, and not necessarily that we don't want to work with businesses that are B2B, as much as just the vast majority of services on IFT are consumer facing, whether that's Domino's Pizza, Philips Hue, so on and so forth, that it made the most sense for us to build our business there. And we've had great success there for the last 2-3 years. We've doubled the business year over year, I think for 2 years running now. So that's working. And we want to make sure that it's really clear how that works to users, and that they don't feel like they're getting kind of a raw end of the deal, because at the end of the day, the trust that we built with end users is so critical to all of this working. IFT is really built on trust and neutrality, and we want to do right by everybody involved, whether you're just an individual signing up and using IFT, or you're a brand. So let's see. Question from Andrew, not sure if this has already been discussed, is detailed user documentation available for pro applets? So you're way ahead of the curve there. It's probably not easily accessible yet, and you're speaking specifically to some of the more advanced capabilities we're currently in development with, but we will have some of that documentation. Reach out to me on Twitter, if you will, Andrew, and I'll try to send you what we do have now, whether it's public or not. Clovis, New Mexico, thank you for the comment again. Cody is asking, how do you feel about external companies charging a premium to use applets on IFT? Perfect. And that's one of the things I addressed right at the beginning of the session. If you missed some of that, please, tune in. We'll kind of share the kind of recap video here later this afternoon. But long story short, really quick answer. We have what we call the developer plan. It's a flat $199 a year, no maximum on users, and that's available to any brand that wants to be on IFT, but not take advantage of some of the more premium products that we offer brands, and not have to pass that cost on to users if they don't want to. So Tal is asking ingredients. Oops, sorry, Tal, your comment got moved around really quick. Ingredients and file names conform to work with Linux, Windows, Mac. NPR articles to Dropbox with subject as file name. It appears on Dropbox Cloud, but can't sync to PC sometimes due to non-conforming. And actually, this is I've heard this feedback from a couple of folks on Twitter as well. We've actually got a ticket that our team is going to take a look at here, hopefully shortly, to make sure we're escaping file names correctly in such a way that that file can sync everywhere. I'd love to see that problem specifically actually be addressed by some of those file services themselves. Whether it's Dropbox or Microsoft OneDrive or Box, so many of these file services may have differences in how they treat file names. But in the situations where they're not handling that on their end, we still want to do everything we can to make sure those files can get saved. So that's essentially a bug that we want to take a look at. Thanks for raising it. Doug is asking, at the Abilities Expo, not sure what the Ability Expo is anyone a lady told me about advocating for people? Doug, you might have to ask that question again. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking. I apologize. Tim is asking, is IFT part of the Connected Home IP, or that's the CHIP for short, working group, and do you anticipate contributing to this? So we are currently not part of that working group, although we are connected in with a lot of the folks that are a big part of that. A lot of the big brands, I think Google, Apple, Amazon, pretty sure Microsoft is part of that too. I might be getting them wrong, but a lot of the big players and a lot of the medium and smaller players as well are a part of that. One of the big things that CHIP is focused on is a standard way for connected devices to talk to each other without doing a full round trip up to the cloud or to the internet. And because IFT has made a big bet, over a decade ago, that the internet is, really where all the cool stuff happens. There's a lot of reasons why you might want devices to talk to each other without some kind of shared, full internet connection. But over time, we felt that it was a pretty safe bet that almost everything was going to be able to round trip to the internet, that was going to get cheaper, faster, more reliable. And we acknowledge that we're not quite there yet, but really every year we see a whole lot of progress being made where it becomes less and less of a problem. And so much of what could be interesting to integrate with some of those connected devices may not be another connected device in your home. It might be the weather service. It might be your car. It might be your cell phone that may or may not be at home. It might be, Dropbox. All those things then require an internet connection on both ends to work. And that's really where IFT is focused. So that's not to say we may not take part in the CHIP initiative, as much as it's not a perfect fit in terms of where they're focused and the bets that we've made over the years. Great. Paul is asking, does IFT employ geofencing, or does that fall on the product service side? So geofencing is kind of a general term. One of the ways in which IFT is responsible for some of the geofencing stuff, we have a service that we just call simply the location service. And that's the same service for both iOS devices and Android. They're very kind of mobile device specific. And that does use some of the geofencing capabilities that are native to those two, mobile operating systems. And we're actually working on ways in which brands can take advantage of that, of course, always with user permission, in ways in which they don't also have to kind of suck the battery and create all kinds of additional code and catch all the problems associated with tracking geofences. So we do a lot of geofencing ourselves. Now, there are other brands out there that have very specific triggers and queries. I can't think of any actions, but really triggers and queries that also use geofencing, and in most cases are using that as part of access that their apps have to the mobile device and some of the location features there as well. Some things that aren't geofencing based, but are still really location specific. We've seen a lot of Wi-Fi routers and different kind of home networking gear be able to do something that I think is really cool. Say something about your presence based on whether or not your device, your mobile device, is present on a network or not. And I think that's a really neat way to try to get at your location in a useful way for the user, but not necessarily have access to your exact location. You're either on the network or you're not. And we've seen a lot of users take advantage of that to build some really cool use cases. So let's see, Mark. Sorry, the comments are jumping around here a little bit on me. Mark is asking, I would like to see timers, parentheses delay, so you can make things only operate at certain times. And so, Mark, that's one of the things that I think is going to be a lot easier for users to get at with what we're tentatively calling Pro or Pro Applets. And that's where we'll have some additional kind of conditional logic, queries, multiple actions. And I think what would be a really useful way to think about how delays might work is not only to kind of add delays to a query or what we call filter or filter code, but to even make that something that you can add to any action. So you imagine most delays really kind of take place at the action level. Somebody rings your doorbell as a trigger. You want to turn on a light or unlock the door or send a notification. And you can basically associate some time delay for that action to take place. And that's something we're actively looking into. Probably won't make it as part of the initial launch of this new thing we're calling Pro, but we've heard a lot from users, and it's one of the great things that we've learned through these Ask Me Anything sessions, that delay seems to be one of those things that really unlocks a whole lot of use cases for folks. So we want to try to address that. Jose, hi. Clovis, New Mexico. Awesome username again. I'd love to have an IFT that emails or whatever my bank balances and credit card balances from several accounts. Given IFT's model, is this likely to happen? So it probably has less to do with our model and more to do with, is your bank on IFT? I think one of the most popular and biggest banking services on IFT, we have, I think, more than 10 now. But there's a service that's out of the UK called Monzo. They're kind of a startup bank, but they've really kind of lit the world on fire in a positive way. They've really made kind of mobile first banking and a really great user experience. And I think they've already launched here in the US, or if not, they're very close to it. So if you're willing to change banks, that would be an easy way to do exactly what you're asking for. Is to switch to Monzo. If it's a little bit more cumbersome to change banks, which the banks like to make it a little bit tricky for you to change your accounts around, I'd encourage you to reach out to your bank, whatever it is, and tell them that you want to see them on IFT. The financial services sector, especially those services that are really kind of consumer facing, have made some big steps just in the last couple of years towards being more open. Towards having APIs, whether that's some of the even some of the legislation coming out of the EU and the UK that's kind of forcing some of those banks to be more open and be more kind of API based. And I think some of that's also now starting to come here to the States and hopefully to the bank nearest you, the bank in your country as well. So Steph is asking, are we planning to integrate other languages? Yes. So one of the things that we have been really, really slow to do. And I apologize because, from day one, IFT was kind of an international service, even though we're still really only localized in English. There's parts of what we do, especially as we get into what we call connections and some of the IFT stuff that can be embedded inside other brands' applications that is localized. But we haven't extended that out to all of our products yet. And it's one of the things that we've kind of pushed off, largely because we wanted to make sure that the product just in English was really set in stone, that we really felt confident both in the product and the business that we built around it. And I'm happy to say that I think we have that confidence now. And so it's one of the things that is going to be a lot easier for us to tackle because we don't anticipate any big changes or reshuffling of how the product works or how the business works. because we've really figured a lot of those things out. So localization is coming. Please on Twitter, let me know what your preferred language would be. My hope is that we're covering, the top 8, 10 of those languages right out of the gate, with more support coming soon after. So Suyan is asking, is there a plan to launch a marketplace for individual developers to monetize? So that's actually a really good question. The idea of IFTTT as a marketplace has been something we've talked a lot about. It's really, really compelling. And you can even kind of squint a little bit. And if you think about how brands show up on IFTTT today, it's kind of like a marketplace. We're not actually facilitating any type of, kind of monetary exchanges or monetization directly yet. But it's one of the things that if you think about the value prop that IFTTT really offers to brands themselves, is that if you're on IFTTT, you don't have to build your own developer platform. And we found that so many brands, unless you're Apple or Google or Amazon, really struggle not just to build that platform, but to make it successful, to make it something that lots of other developers want to build on. And the real reason for that isn't because people are building bad platforms. It's just that there's so many platforms out there. It's really kind of a problem that just grows in size for every new connected service or device that's on the market. And so one of the things that you get if you have a successful developer platform is the option to be able to monetize certain API endpoints or certain types of transactions. And that's one of the things, if you think of IFTTT as really kind of a potential replacement for that developer platform that we want to offer brands and developers in the future. So if you have more specific kind of requests or even an idea there, Sian, in mind about what you want to monetize or how you want that marketplace to work, we're all ears. So would love to hear more. Omar Naz is asking, I really love IFTTT, thank you, but it's okay to say but. My only concern is some services are very slow. Please solve, even if this will be on the paid plan. So it's one of the biggest challenges we have in terms of applet speed is really that there are a number of services still on IFTTT that are polling based. And so what there's really kind of two types of triggers, and triggers are responsible for the vast majority of slowness across the system. And you can have a polling based trigger, or you can have what we call a real-time trigger. Real-time triggers are great because a service literally tells us, they kind of tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, IFTTT, there's new data, we're going to send it to you, or you should come get it. A poll-based trigger, we literally, IFTTT, when I say we have to ask the service over and over and over again, is there any new data? Like, so for Twitter, it's like we're asking Twitter via their API, every 10, 15, 20 minutes, hey, did this user tweet? Did this user tweet? Did this user tweet? And it goes on and on and on like that forever. And the vast majority of the responses are no, unless you're somebody that's tweeting every 10, 15 minutes. And so it's very inefficient, not only for us, IFTTT, but also for the other services themselves. They've got to pay every time they respond. They're incurring some overhead and costs on their infrastructure to respond. And so it's really kind of a win all the way around. It's cheaper for the business themselves, cheaper for IFTTT, but most importantly, it ends up in a faster experience for users. And so one of the things that we want to address with what we're calling the Pro plan for users is to accelerate, especially on that polling side, some of the requests we make. So, basically saying, if you're willing to pay us a little bit, we're willing to pay a lot more on the infrastructure side to ask that question over and over again. Now, the real solution over time is to try to move all of those polling triggers over to real time. And that's something that the brands themselves can control. But it's one of the things that I think, as a stopgap, because it's all those triggers aren't going to move over overnight. It's probably going to be years and years until everything switches over, that we can provide a much better experience because the cost would be higher for us and the service. But if users are willing to pay a little bit for that, that's something that we really want to do. And we can get that, we could ask that question every minute, and so it can get really, really fast, even though it'd be incredibly inefficient from an infrastructure standpoint? So that's a great question. Thank you. Christian is asking, do we plan to add parameters so applets only work during a certain time of the day? Yes, parameters may not be the exact way we talk about it, but one of the things we're considering packaging in with what we're calling Pro is this idea of having a query. So if you think of what an applet is really consists of today, it's a trigger if something happens. So if somebody tweets, if somebody rings your doorbell, so on and so forth, and an action then. And so that action could be, save a file to Dropbox, post a tweet, send an email. And what we've heard for a decade now from folks is that that's powerful, but they want to do more. And it's one of the things we're really excited to actually address now. And so think of how queries fit into that is somewhere right in the middle. If something happens, when, you can go and fetch data. So you could call the Weather Underground service to see, is it currently raining right now? Or when did it last rain? You could call your Ring doorbell service and try to figure out, well, when's the last time someone rang the doorbell? Did someone ring the doorbell in the last 10 minutes? And then from there, you can evaluate the ingredients, which are basically parameters or pieces of data from both the trigger and the queries. You could have multiple queries even, you don't just have to have one. You can evaluate that in what we're initially calling filter code. So it'll be JavaScript based at first, and we'll build a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get editor on top of that. So you don't actually have to know JavaScript if you're somebody that doesn't know JavaScript, which is the vast majority of people out there. And you can evaluate that data to then conditionally run actions. So you could run 1 action, 2 actions, 0 actions. And even with this idea of delay, which is another question earlier on in the session, that can get really, really powerful. So would it be really interested to hear your use case for some of those things you're asking for, and we'll try to make sure and address them, if not as part of that initial launch, shortly thereafter. So let's see. Tall, you're saying it's a bug. Maybe you're commenting to someone else. I want to make sure I address it. If it is a bug, let me know, Tall. Raphael, hi, you're planning to use IF for your next project. Where can I get the best beginner's tutorial? Really depends, Raphael. If it's a project around a service or brand that you're building or launching, that's what developers might take advantage of. And we have a whole set of documentation there. And then we have some user documentation that I admit is either out of date or not as complete as we would like it to. We've really, I think, depended so much on the community of users to create some of those tutorials in the past. And that's one of the things that we'd like to address, is to kind of have some official versions. So really depends, Raphael. So I would encourage you, maybe reach out to me on Twitter. Tell me a little bit more about that project, and I'll make sure to point you in the right direction of that documentation. Oh, a little more info from Tall here. Instead of escaping, you might substitute, since PC won't handle escape chars. Okay, yes, maybe you're saying for those files that are uploaded to the cloud services, basically instead of escaping those characters, replacing them or removing them somehow. I think you're spot on. That's something hopefully our team will be considering as they try to fix that bug. Quentin is asking, oh, sorry, my comment box is jumping all over the place here. Quentin, I'll get back to you. There you go. Has there been any plans to integrate IFT into Siri Shortcuts? So actually, funny enough, we were integrated with what became Siri Shortcuts. Sorry, that's hard to say. Oh my goodness, the name of the service, they were really good folks too. So Apple bought a company that ended up becoming Siri Shortcuts. And we were initially integrated with them, but I think as part of some of that integration and changes to their service, they actually became much more kind of device oriented, which is a very kind of Apple way of looking at the world versus internet oriented. And we weren't able to kind of maintain that integration. So I would love to see that come back in the future. So I would reach out, Apple sometimes would be a bit of a black box. But reaching out to Apple and telling them you want to see shortcuts on IFT could be really powerful. And we also have our own connections at Apple, and we'll continue to kind of lobby for that integration, because I agree, the shortcut stuff is actually really well done. It's very, very compelling stuff, but it's so device specific that it's missing a lot of the opportunities to connect to services that just maybe don't happen to have an app on the device or don't happen to have that full integration with Siri Shortcuts yet. So Steeler Dave, kind of like Steely Dan, I dig it. Just wanted to thank you for your product. My Wink-enabled Bali blinds would not work with Amazon Alexa and only work with voice commands through IFT. Awesome. Glad to hear that we're able to kind of plug some of those holes there. It's not something that we can kind of rely on forever, because my guess is the best solution that you would appreciate the most is just having those Bali blinds work directly with Alexa. But if we can plug some of those holes until that happens, we're happy to do so. That's a big part of, I think, how a lot of people use IFT is they're really looking for more integrations and more power that the developers of those other services just haven't gotten to yet, or haven't been able to justify relative to the size of the user base that might want it. And that's, I think, a totally valid use case, and glad we could help. Lex, you're asking about multi-language support. Short answer is yes, it's coming. It's something that we've, regrettably, delayed way too long. We really appreciate the folks out there that are making do with our English-only interface today. More languages are on the way. Let's see, Alvergon, pardon me if I'm not pronouncing that right. Is there any plan to fix the battery consumption of the app? So I'm not sure if you're referring to iOS or Android. Battery consumption is something that we've always been really, hopefully on top of. It's fluctuated back and forth over the years, really depending on how the operating systems, whether that's iOS or Android, allow us to access primarily location. Now, there's some other things that could be fairly draining on the battery, like uploading a lot of photos to the cloud after you take them. But we're always working to make sure that we're using just the right amount of battery, which is always the least amount possible. And so if you're seeing something different or seeing something in particular, some problem where you feel like IFT is consuming way too much of your mobile battery, please send me more details over Twitter, and we're happy to take a look. There could always be some kind of bug or other issue, or we also have a number of little options. I guess they're not little, but they're options that are very mobile app specific that allow you to kind of tailor when you want IFT to work, whether it's only on Wi-Fi, or certain types of kind of limits on how often we can wake up in the background as an app and do things on your behalf. Also, use some of that battery. We understand how precious that is. So Abdullah, I apologize, I'm mispronouncing that, but is asking, I hope that there is a wait feature. Yep, we addressed that earlier on. If you didn't miss that, we definitely want to provide something that tries to address a lot of those requests. Would love to get more info on your specific use case. That way we can make sure as we launch that feature, it's something that right out of the gate makes you happy and helps things work better together. So Lou is asking a basic question. I have an IFT set up for NWS. I'm not quite sure what NWS is, to get advanced warnings of storms. Oh, National Weather Service. At least that's my guess. When they issue a warning, they issue several docs, projected path graphic, English text, Spanish text, etc. Uh-oh, I'm sorry. I read that out loud and I didn't get to the question. Lou, maybe there's skipping down. They also issue update every 4 hours. I only need to see daily. Any way to do this? I think this could be something that we can help address with what we're launching and calling Pro. Now, there's a little overhead. You might have to kind of hack it a little bit. But I think that's something we're looking to address to give you some more control over, not getting that update every 4 hours, but just getting it once a day. You could also reach out to the National Weather Service if you want them to change something or add a different type of trigger maybe a daily trigger that collects all of that with just one kind of update per day. That could also be another path to getting that fixed. See, apologies here. My comments keep jumping around. Leo, you're asking, how is IF still alive when there is shortcuts? Good question. You know, there's been all kinds of potential IF killers over the years, whether that's Alexa, Apple or Siri Shortcuts, Google. You know, Google Assistant has some things that are kind of like IFT. We've never been too worried, and here's why. One is what IFT does is so unique in the fact that we are neutral. We want everything to work better together. That's our tagline. We don't care if it's from Google or Apple or from a startup with, you know, from two people that are still in a garage. And that's just something that those big brands, Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, they just can't offer. They end up having too high of a strategy tax. They basically have to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. And it's, you know, it's one of the big problems that I think is starting to get a lot more attention now, whether you call it antitrust or not. You know, like I'm not going to espouse my opinion on whether or not these things or these other big brands are, you know, doing something that might be called a monopoly. But they end up harming the end user when they make it more difficult for them to mix and match products and services from different companies. And that's a problem that IFT is very specifically looking to solve, because we think it's actually the best for everybody. It's best for the end users for sure, but it's also in the best interest of those brands long term. They may not think that. They may think short term that they're going to make more money if they try to keep everybody within their own kind of bubble or ecosystem. But at the end of the day, there's just no stopping this march of servicification. Everything is going to be an internet service. And funny enough, the vast majority of brands and products that people use today aren't yet internet services. So we're still just at the beginning stages of seeing how the internet kind of pervades everything we do. And hopefully that happens in a very positive way for users. And there's all kinds of problems that the industry has to solve, you know, privacy, reliability, just clarity, understanding how things work for end users. But at the end of the day, if it's going to be connected to the internet, it might as well work with and share information with all the other services and products, as long as users are in control of that. And that's what we believe. And frankly, that's not what Google and Apple and Amazon believe. They think something very different. Specifically, you know, let's make this work really well with our products first and think about everybody else as secondary. So that's one of the reasons we've been able to survive. The other real reason is we are, you know, internet first. We're not mobile first. And we talked a little bit about shortcuts before. You know, the Apple mindset is so in so many ways oriented around the device itself, the phone or the iPad or your laptop. The internet is kind of secondary. And so a lot of what you can do with shortcuts is very specific to what you can do on the device. And a lot of what you can do with IFT is very specific to the internet and all the other things that might be connected to it, whether or not it's also on your device. So Omar is asking, why not launch an IoT button similar to the Amazon Dash buttons, which I was an early adopter of those Dash buttons. They were super cool. And ship them to customers when they subscribe to the premium plan. That's actually a pretty cool idea. If we could find a way to do that in a way that made economic sense, you know, it's expensive to build hardware and especially to maintain it and keep it connected to the internet over time. If we can do that, would love to do that. One of the things that has really guided IFT over the years, though, is our intention to be neutral. Our business, our product is solely focused on helping other businesses and other products integrate together and do that in a way that the end user and the people that use those products and services really like. And you know, like I said, IFT is built on trust and neutrality. The second we start to build our own hardware, is really the second that we start to compete with other products and services, whether they're on IFT or not. And so if we did something like that, we would want to make sure we are doing it in a neutral way. And it would be I think even cooler if there were other businesses that could be built on top of IFT that did that. And maybe we could partner with them in some way that could help those premium subscribers get access to that product for free or at a lower cost. But it's a super cool idea, not one that we've thought a lot about, but I think the neutrality of value for us has always won out. But there could be other ways that we address that. Radio period docos, sorry. Cool username. I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but thank you. You said the product is just amazing, very useful. You need a salesperson to contact you. Well, be careful what you ask for. You're definitely going to get a salesperson to contact you. So you're asking for it. You'll get what you ask for. We're more than happy to reach out and talk about how you might work with us. Ratted MC, you take one of those buttons. Cool. If I can find some of the buttons that are already on IFT that do exactly that, I know we have more than a few. I'll point them your way. Jim is saying, great product, lots of useful functions that you'd otherwise have to write code for. Awesome. Great to hear that there's someone that's also a coder that still takes advantage of the system. I think that's always good to hear if we can save you some time there. The giant pile of books behind me is scary. That's only one of two piles. Let's see if you're still on, Jim. I've got a second pile right there. It's even taller. I'm a big reader, love to read, and it's a little embarrassing actually that pile of books makes its way on the camera. That's not my intention. I don't want to wow people or impress people with how many books I have, but I have read almost all those books, so they're not just for show. Clovis, you touched on this a bit earlier, but notice that most of our triggers are fill in the blank with limited choices. You plan to create an SQL-like language that allow you to kind of create more general triggers. That's a really cool idea. One of the kind of limiting factors is, we go back to this idea of trust and neutrality. We really want to make sure that the brands themselves also have a very high level of control around what types of APIs, what types of triggers, what types of data they're making available. And we really look at it as it's kind of a dialogue between the end users, the people, and the businesses or the APIs. And that goes back and forth. If users really want something or could get a lot of value out of something being available, then it's really up to those brands or businesses to make that available. But if the business decides, hey, this is some data that is either really sensitive, we're worried about, users maybe misusing it or using it in the wrong way, or if that data is really key to how their business works, we really respect their right to not make that available. And so I think some kind of SQL-based trigger language would really depend on those APIs being kind of fully available first and foremost. So if you have specific triggers that you'd like to see as part of a service that aren't yet available, let us know. But I think more importantly, let that service know because the vast majority, if not all the services on IFT are now responsible for updating and adding to that API that's available on IFT over time. And we actually see, updates made every day now to services, and it should be relatively low overhead, especially if they're already on IFT. Roz says buttons are awesome. Yep, Clovis triggers even across multiple services. Would love to learn more about that kind of multiple services trigger use case. It's one of the ones that sounds really cool, and but it really depends on what that use case is and how you want to pull it off. See, Marone is saying that the YouTube integration is very slow, and sometimes you execute a command and it takes a long time to understand. This is one of the things we also addressed at the top of the hour. I believe YouTube is also one of those services like Twitter that is still primarily polling based. And that ends up being a big problem, not only for users that get a much slower response so when you upload a video or when you like a video on YouTube. But it's also a high overhead for IFTTT and YouTube themselves, because we have to ask over and over again, is there new data available? Part of what we're looking to bundle in with what we're calling the Pro plan for users is the ability to get a much faster experience, especially for some of those polling triggers where we're willing to kind of ask that question more frequently, and also prioritize some of the real-time stuff that's already very fast, hundreds of milliseconds in most cases, to be able to make those a little bit faster as well. So the primary problem that we've seen is largely still around those polling triggers. Sion, yeah, awesome. Would love to hear more monetization ideas. And yeah, connect to your vector robot. I haven't heard of the vector robot. Would love to learn more about that as well. So hit me up on Twitter. Roz42 is asking if we're connecting to NOAA. I don't believe we are. We are connected to the National Weather Service. I can't remember the acronym for the NOAA, but I think it's maybe more oceanography, or I'm gonna get that wrong and embarrass myself. It's not in one of these big books behind me, so I don't know. But we'd love to work with them because they're a government agency. You're probably going to have to wait for some kind of administration change before you see a lot of big digital initiatives taken up again. Unfortunately, there hasn't been as much interest in those government agencies going digital over the last 3 or 4 years. But it's one of the things that prior that we were seeing a lot of interest from government agencies to be a part of what we're doing, whether that's weather or transport, even something like earthquakes. Would be incredibly useful. One of the things we're dealing with here in California is another round, unfortunately, of some of those wildfires. Hopefully, if you're tuning in from California, you're safe and sound. But it would be great to have that as an API, just for some of the safety and security concerns. So much of that is government data that the government could make available via an API and thus via IFTTT. But they've got to have that motivation to do it. Pardon me. Comments are jumping around a little bit more again. See, Tall is asking, speaking of uploading pics to the cloud, Android to Dropbox, it's always been inconsistent. Usually only half the pictures make it. That sounds like some kind of bug. I'd love to learn more about that. I've been uploading my iOS photos to Dropbox actually for I think the better part of 6 or 7 years now. And it's missed a couple over the years, but certainly not half. So would love to learn more about the problem that you're seeing. Otal is saying rebrand the flick buttons. Yeah, flick. There you go. That I should have known that right out of the gate. Flick buttons is a great product. They're also really good people. We see them every year at CES. Always really enthusiastic, always building something cool and new. So if you haven't checked out the flick buttons, for those that are looking for some kind of simple hardware button, they've built some really cool stuff over the years. Addy X Gaming is, how does it work? Will it hurt or break my computer? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Addy, but it shouldn't break anything. It should be completely safe. Even your ability as a user to do something that creates unexpected or problematic, syncing or changes is pretty low. Although it is something, part of what we do is offer a lot of power to end users to go above and beyond, what the services already provide. But we actually see very few situations in which people do anything that creates a negative experience for them or their social followers or things like that. Frankly, that is one of the things that we were worried about before we even launched IFTTT a decade ago. And we just haven't seen a whole lot of those problems, thankfully. And we've tried to take some action to make sure that we make it harder for people to kind of shoot themselves in the foot or do something that creates unexpected consequences. Tio is asking, Novus user, but not sure how this is done already but I believe having a way to provide suggestions, vote on new triggers, actions to companies' brands via IFTTT would be useful. You're totally right. We have something like that today. So if you enable an applet and you go back to the applet after you've turned it on, you should get a little feedback box. You're able to kind of say, is this working, or do you like this, yes or no? And I believe then, depending on whether you say yes or no, I think it's actually available either way. You get a little field there, a box, and you can type in a request. Hey, this works great, but I would love to see this additional trigger. That does go directly to the brands. We see about 5,000 or 6,000 people fill that out every day. So it certainly is making its way to those brands, and we want to make that kind of feedback capability something that's more easily accessible. And even in the situations where somebody hasn't turned on an applet, maybe they can go directly to like the service page and type in some feedback that makes its way to the services themselves. So it's a great point. Like I said, what we do is really kind of facilitate, like I say, a dialogue between users and businesses. And the users themselves have so much power and leverage. If they want something, or if it makes their life better, and they let those brands know, we found that those brands are pretty quick to take action on it. So we need to do a better job at IFT of making that type of feedback easier to give. Paul Sumner is asking, what is your customer distribution? So right now, the only types of people or businesses that can be an IFT customer, essentially pay us, are the brands themselves. And Paul, at the beginning of the hour, if you go back and rewatch, kind of opened with a lot of info on how our business works today. But we're also in the works with something that has really been a long time coming, that allows end users to kind of go above and beyond with something we're calling Pro. So that right now there are 0 people, end users that are paying for that Pro package, but it's something that is launching hopefully here shortly, and we'd love to get feedback and improve it over time. Because at the end of the day, like I said, trust and neutrality is really what IFT is built on, and a big way to build trust between a brand like IFT and anybody else, whether it's an end user or another business or brand, is to give them options to become customers. It creates, I think, a really powerful relationship that allows us to kind of hold each other accountable, I think, in a really positive way. So it's one of the reasons we're doing that is to make it clear to the users themselves that they're also at the table. They have a voice, and they can kind of make their products and services work better together, and influence IFT and hold us accountable and make sure we're doing right by both users and the brands that are already IFT customers as well. Gert Martins, sorry, that was my own probably totally wrong accent there, says neutrality rules in the age of big tech, ready to subscribe to services gluing everything together, need to go now. Oh, sorry, you probably didn't get to hear me mispronounce your name, but totally agree. It's one of the things that I think is just so underrated and also so hard for big brands to do. Google, Apple, Amazon, I don't think they're evil, but they just can't go back. They've done it a certain way, a very unneutral way for so long, and they've been able to build such huge businesses because of that. Just think of it from a shareholder point of view. Their shareholders aren't going to let them change course and hurt those businesses that they built over the years. And so that really forces their hand. It forces them into doing things that aren't good for their users, that aren't good for the other developers and brands that are building on their platforms. And it's really just unfortunate. And so we really, rather than point fingers and raise pitchforks, which some of that is justified and people should be doing it, here at IFT, we just want to show that there is a better way, that you can build a business in a neutral way. And it's something that we, like I say, have based the entire company around trust and neutrality. Here's an interesting from Jorg is asking, would you consider offering a 10-year works with IFT plan to encourage more customers to invest in technology? I'm not quite sure how that would work or why the 10 years is important, but would love to learn more either here on this session or over Twitter. But yeah, we would love to see businesses, governments, nonprofits, pretty much anybody that has data or products or services that could benefit from integrating with other products and services. We would love to see them make that type of investment. So we're all ears. Let's see. Peter is reminding me that it's 10 minutes before the hour. Would love to hear any last questions. Like I said, subscribe if you want to make sure and catch future versions of this. We're going to try to do this on a much more regular basis. We, kind of both personally and as a business, have seen so much value from the questions and comments and feedback. We've already fixed a whole lot of bugs, problems. We've made adjustments to some of our roadmaps. And changed some of what we've been building recently with what we call Pro, or that premium user plan, because of that feedback. So please keep it coming. And would love to see you all again here in a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to subscribe to our YouTube service. I've got to say that, otherwise Peter will get me in big trouble. Or follow and ping me on Twitter at @LTibbets. On Twitter, and don't hold back. You can't hurt my feelings. We've been doing this for a long time, and we acknowledge that we have not paid as close attention to what users want and what users are asking for as we should have. We're looking to make up for lost ground. So please don't hold back. It's okay to say something sucks or we've done a bad job. We want to do a better job in the future, and we appreciate it. So. With that, thank you all. Hope to see you again next time, and have a great Thursday and a great afternoon. Thanks again. Talk soon.